Okay, good evening. Adeola, mic
Yeah,
check.
good evening. I'm here.
Okay, okay then. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
Okay,
madam.
yeah.
Good evening, everyone. It's 5:01 and it's time for class. So today we have political parties and structures by our facilitator, Mr. Biang Livinus. He's already on the call, and I would advise we all inform our party chairperson, our party members to join into class, as class will start by 5:05. So please get ready, get set as we begin soon. So see you by 5:05.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you can all hear me. Hello?
Good evening, we can hear you.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Akiola Atibola, and I'm going to be the moderator for this evening class. So as I can see, we have about 49 participants or thereabouts. I guess we are more than that. So this is 5:05, and I guess we can go ahead. So good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. As Charlie has said earlier, our class today is on political parties and structures. And our lecturer, our facilitator today is a very esteemed person and he's online already. And I guess we can now go ahead. So like I said earlier, our class today is on political parties and structures. And our facilitator is no other person than Dr. Ibiang Divinus. And I believe Doctor is online. And before we go ahead with the class, before Dr. Ibiang comes on, let me just do a quick rundown on his profile. And it's quite rich, as you can see this. Dr. Ibiang Livinus is currently a public health and biosafety expert and a professional in politics. And as you can see, that statement is quite professional politics, which will inspire all of us. The professional in politics with over 19 years working in the social sector to strengthen institutional reforms that can lead to social change. He has led several student/youth movements and has been involved in human rights advocacy He was a former Federal Capital Territory interim chairman of the Alliance for New Nigeria Party, ANN, and it was under his leadership that the party built the structures at the local government and ward levels before his ascension to the office of the National Vice Chairman of the party for the South-South Zone after the National Convention 2018. In this capacity, Dr. Ibiang served several committees, prominent amongst which is the Security Committee, which he chaired, the Partnership Committee with several other parties for the general elections 2019. He was also a member of the National Campaign Council of the party and served as South-South Zonal Director and Chairman of the National Campaign. Dr. Ibiang is a graduate of the University of Calabar and holds several certifications in his chosen field. He holds in addition a Master's in Business Administration from Ahmadu University and a PhD in International Public. He sits on the board of trustees in the Electoral College, Nigeria. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Livinus Ibiang. Dr. Sai.
Before Doctor speaks, I'd like to say a few things about.
Oh, sorry, my issue, sir.
So, Dr. Ibiang Livinus is a senior brother. I wouldn't have done the things I did in Alliance for New Nigeria without him. He was the FCT chairman. So let's just say he's one of those that created Kone Lawal you know today. He has remained a brother, and it's very, very impressive to watch how he has supported the Electoral College and helped us build the Electoral College. He will take you in other courses, and I think one more course apart from this, which is very interesting. But he taught me, even though I had served in a party at a national level, he taught me what commitment meant. I remember one of the things he said to me when I was running for Senate, even though I was in another party at the time, COA, he said his party was not even going to bring out a candidate because he couldn't find a candidate as good as I was. So when COA decided to join the COP Alliance, and the decision was not taken at the National Executive Council level, I left the party because it was a wrong decision. That destroyed COA party in the end, that decision. And Ibiang Livinus was ready to welcome me home, and he worked with me not because I'd known him before, but he worked with me because he sensed my competence before he even met me. He's one of the people that makes me think I'm a giant. Meanwhile, I'm his little brother, and he's been exceptional to me as a person. He joined the board of trustees, member board of trustees in the Electoral College this year. And he has remained, and he remains one of the greatest people I have ever known. He's still my teacher. I still listen to him. There's nothing he tells me that I wouldn't listen to, apart from the fact that he has refused to allow me to be governor of Cross River. I think that's the only thing he won't allow me to. So thank you, everyone. I'd like to welcome my senior brother, Dr. Ibiang.
My boss. You see, when your boss introduces you like this, you now begin to wonder where to start from. Thank you so much, our able ED. Thank you. I appreciate that that background. And thanks, Deola, for that intro. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, I want to welcome you all to this very important session. Please confirm you can hear me very well.
Yeah, we can hear you, Doctor.
Okay. All right. The executive director, and permit me to ask CEO, the Electoral College Nigeria, Kunlela, my very good brother and colleague in the struggle, members of the Electoral College management team, fellows of this particular cohort of the Electoral College Nigeria. It is my pleasure to be with us this evening. I count it a great privilege to be part of this particular process and to have the very big task of delivering this lecture session on political parties and structures. And of course, the other course I'll be handling, which the ED talked about, on major constitutional developments in Nigeria, both of which are very clearly interwoven, and we'll see that when we'll be taking the second course. As a way of introduction, permit me to set the scene by sharing with you some key takeaways from this particular course. First, I want us to note that Nigeria's political parties structures are basically shaped by constitutional rules. And I'll be speaking to that in particular. The 1999 Constitution, as amended, guarantees multi-party democracy, especially when you look at Section 221 of the Constitution. And then you go down to Section 222 and the subs, down to 223, and of course 225, where the powers of the National Assembly are circumscribed with respect to sanctioning erring politicians in the course of electoral process. So first of all, I want us to understand that the Nigerian political parties and their structures are shaped by constitutional rules. That's one. Secondly, the other thing that shapes Nigerian political parties and structure is the historical evolution of our political parties. I will be delving into that very shortly. Regional dynamics, we will also be looking at how regional dynamics shape political parties and the structures. And then, of course, we will also take a dive into practical realities of elections and how all of that shape political parties. It is an understanding of all of these intricate factors that I've mentioned that explains how power is organized and contested for in Nigeria. So I want us to note this. That's why I'm taking time to lay this foundation for us. Let's move to the next slide. So, as a background, it's important to note that political parties are very, very fundamental to our democratic process. And as a result, you can't have a democracy without political parties. So it's very, very important. That's one. And of course, we all know what democracy is all about. It's basically rule of government by the people for the people. And it is basically, it evolves from the fact that the powers of the states are delegated through an electoral process to those who govern. And also that political parties are the platforms through which power is contested for in a democratic system of government, of which, of course, Nigeria is one, even though many people seem to question that. So the history of political parties in Nigeria goes as far back as the British colonization of our country. And in fact, one of the foremost legends, permit me to use that, icons who midwife political parties in Nigeria is in the name of Herbert Macaulay, who was a grandson of Bishop Ajayi Crowther, and who formed the first political party in Nigeria, the Nigerian National Democratic Party, way back in 1922. Next slide, please. Next slide. So here are some historical facts as it relates to the development of political parties in Nigeria. So after the formation of the Nigerian National Democratic Party in 1922 came the establishment of the Nigerian Legislative Council to provide some political space for the participation of indigenes in the affairs of the new country at the time. And during this time, the right to vote was limited to two major cities, which were, Lagos and Calabar. Now, a more vigorous process of political party formation was initiated with the formation of the Nigerian Youth Movement way back in 1938, and subsequently the National Council of Nigeria and Cameroon's NCNC in 1944 under the leadership of Herbert Macaulay. And then in 1948 came the establishment of the Action Group, which while the Northern People's Congress was established in 1951. So you could see how the parties are beginning to, come to be. Now, these parties constituted themselves as political expression of, the different regional blocks. As you can see, we have the Action Group, which was largely based in the West. Then the what we call the Northern People's Congress, which was largely in the North. And what was originally the NCNC, which of course do you want me to share? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, so I have taken over the slides so that I can control that as I move very quickly. So I was saying that we had the different political parties at the time were merely an expression of the different regional blocks, of course, which was quite understandable. And that, excuse me, while the Action Group was based in the West, the NPC, Northern People's Congress, was based in the North. The NCNC, which was originally a mix of Nigeria and Cameroon, later became the Nigerian based in the eastern part of the country. So these parties evolved based on ethno-regional representation at the time. And it's important to note that the Jamia Mutanin Arewa was largely the cultural association that gave birth to the Northern People's Congress, if you look at history. And then what was originally known as the National Council for Nigeria and Cameroons metamorphosed into the National Congress of Nigerian Citizens, but still retained its acronym NCNC. So this was based in the East. So you could see that the three major blocks at the time had political parties that represented them. So these ethno-regional elite blocs struggled against each other in configuring the politics of the First Republic as a contest for, power by elites of the major ethnic formations. We have the Hausa Fulani, we have the Yorubas, and then we have the Igbos. And of course, excuse me, we have other smaller blocks, which are basically what we refer to as the minority groups. And even though there were no political parties at the time that represent the minority group, because they were largely subsumed under the major political parties at the time. So during the 1959 elections, it's important to note that no political party was able to win the majority of votes because each region basically amassed votes for their parties. So the West amassed votes for the Action Group, the East for the NCNC, and then the North for the MPC. Now, this brought Abubakar Tafawa Balewa in as, Prime Minister, and then Nnamdi Azikiwe. So Nnamdi Azikiwe became the Governor General at independence in 1960 because it was based on the coalition between the MPC and NCNC at the time. That's how they were able to form that majority, because no single party could muster that level of majority to be able to emerge as the ruling party at the time. So Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe later became the first president of Nigeria in 1963. This incidentally was when Nigeria became a republic, while Tafawa Balewa maintained his position as the prime minister of Nigeria. However, in 1964 and 1965 elections precipitated a very serious political crisis that led to the collapse of that republic. And the dissatisfaction we had in the system led to the splitting of NCNC and MPC. So both parties went their ways because of, disagreement. And as a result, there were series of realignments that took place. For instance, NCNC joined with a faction of the Action Group led by Obafemi Awolowo to form what we call the United Progressive Grand Alliance, OPGA. The MPC, on the other hand, joined forces with the other faction of Action Group led by Samuel Ladoke Akintola to form the Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP. However, this particular political climate was cut short because of the civil war. And of course, we had the military incursion into Nigeria's political space. And following that military incursion, there have been, significant changes in the evolution of political parties, as we shall see in the succeeding slide. So, like I said, we had the Civil War, which I considered a blackout politically from 1967 down to 1970. And then we had political developments, of course, in the Second Republic. And so in the run-up to the Second Republic, we had about 150 parties that were announced. 50 of them were fully constituted as, real full political parties. 18 were, felt they had any chance of meeting the imposed conditions for registration of political parties at the time. However, the Nigerian states recognized only 5 of them in 1978. And those 5 political parties that were recognized were the National Party of Nigeria, the Unity Party of Nigeria, the Nigerian People's Party, People's Redemption Party, and then, of course, the Great Nigerian People's Party. So these were the 5 political parties that were recognized in that Second Republic. So build up to the Second Republic. So we had, of course, the Constituent Assembly that was set up at the time by the military head of state, General Olusegun Obasanjo, to midwife what laid the foundation for the constitution that we have today. And the Constituent Assembly midwife what we call the 1979 Constitution. And that constitution laid to rest the provision for independent candidacy, because before now we've had that provision in the Constitution, but that was, removed from the Constitution by the Constituent Assembly at the time. The Constituent Assembly also outlawed regional, ethnic, religious, and extremist political parties based on their considerations. So that was how the Second Republic was, prepared. Now, there was one dominant party that emerged from the transition process in 1978, and that was the National Party of Nigeria, which has its roots, in the regional politics, of course, of the First Republic. Like I said, a lot of the political parties were expressions of the major regional blocs at the time. And of course, there were realignments that followed from the botched First Republic. As a result, we have some of the political parties, at least the major ones that we talked about earlier. And MPN happens to be the biggest party, with its roots, of course, in the regional politics of the First Republic, and which seemed to have a much broader spread within the Nigerian political firmament at the time. Now, the founding fathers of the MPN systematically waxed a coalition from the segmented and, disparate factions that constituted the Nigerian political class at the time. And we had that in 1979, the elections took place, and the elections revealed that the political parties retained very strong regional bases and ended up sharing the votes without any of them completely dominating the other. So basically what we're saying is that if you look at the margin of difference between the votes that were won by the different political parties, it was, not so significant, as it were, because of the major blocks that led to the evolution of the parties that we had at the time. Now, the party that holds very strong ideological background are parties like the People's Redemption Party, which was an offshoot of the Northern Elements Progressive Union, NEPO. And of course, the Unity Party of Nigeria, which was an offshoot of Action Group from the West. These were the two parties that had very distinct and very robust political ideology at the time. Both parties were said to be on the left, while the other three parties were, on the right. So we had the Second Republic, which ran from late 1979 down to 1983, when we had another blackout. The blackout is when the military struck again. So we had the then President Shehu Shagari of blessed memory, who emerged from the 1979 elections as the president of the country, and deputized by Chief Dr. Alex Ekweme. Now, they served only one term, and after the elections that was supposed to usher them into the second term, there was a military strike, which led to the emergence of General Muhammadu Buhari as the head of state of Nigeria. General Muhammadu Buhari and General Tunde Diabon, who was his deputy at the time, both of whom of blessed memory, only ruled between 1983 to 1985. They were equally overthrown by another, coup with this time around, led by General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, who ruled Nigeria up to 1993. Now, that was how the Second Republic, ended. So often while we talk about the botched Second and also, of course, the Third Republic. So there were political activities leading to the Third Republic, and these activities were enunciated by General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. And even though there were a flurry of activities leading to the Third Republic, we never really experienced that Third Republic, and we'll see why. First, there was an attempt to midwife another constitution in 1989, which was to be the Third Republican Constitution. No reference is usually made to that constitution because it was not passed. So at best, all that we had were, drafts. So it was never passed into law. That's why it's usually not a reference. So basically what we normally reference is the 1979 Constitution, which was eventually modified, giving birth to the 1999 Constitution. So there was the establishment of new political parties, which were later banned by Ibrahim Babangida's government. And then the government decided to establish just two political parties, which were the Social Democratic Party, SDP, which was, of course, considered slightly to the left, and then, of course, the National Republican Convention, NRC, which was considered slightly to the right. The SDP had its presidential candidate as Chief Moshood Kashimawo Abiola, popularly known as NQ Abiola, and of course, the NRC had its presidential candidate as Alhaji Bashir Tofa. Both of whom contested the elections that have become a watershed in the history of Nigeria, popularly known as the June 12th election of 1993. So elections were held in 1993 and MQ Abiola of the SDP won. The government of Babangida annulled that election, and this precipitated the collapse of the Third Republic, which of course I said we didn't really experience the Third Republic because it collapsed even before it took off. So all of the activities that took place leading to that elections and thereafter, we never experienced the Third Republic. Now what happened? As a result of the annulment of that elections, there were serious protests in the country, and people were beginning to call for the resignation of General Ibrahim Babangida, and there was serious pressure for him to leave power. As a result, what Babangida did was to set up what they called the Interim National Congress, INC. It was an interim administration headed by Pa Ernest Shonokon, who was the chairman of that Interim National Committee. And having set up that Interim National Committee, Babangida pulled out of the military and resigned his position as the military president of Nigeria at the time. So Chief Ernest Shonokon became the chairman of the Interim National Committee at the time, INC. And because that structure, that committee was not recognized by the Constitution of Nigeria, there were lots of litigations against the government of Ernest Shonokon. Excuse me. So those litigations and the series of unrests and uprising in the country made the country ungovernable. And of course, the litigations against the government made it very difficult for the interim national government of Chief Ernest Shonekan to actually thrive in Nigeria. This political crisis led to the removal of Chief Ernest Shonekan by the Secretary of Defense, who was the most ranking military officer in that cabinet at the time, and that's the person of late General Sani Abacha. So he ousted Chief Ernest Shonekan from office and took over the reins of affair. And so Nigeria experienced another blackout, which ran from 1993 to 1999. So somewhere in 1998, June, I think June 8th specifically, I hope my memory serves me right, June 8th, 1998, General Sani Abacha died in office. And as a result of his death, the Chief of Defense Staff at the time, in the person of General Abdulsalami Abubakar, became the Nigerian's head of state. So he ruled from 1998 to 1999. It was who midwifed the transition to the fourth republic in Nigeria. So as of today, for those who might be asking, we are in the fourth republic. It hasn't changed because Nigeria has had unbroken transition from one civilian administration to another since 1999 to date. So we are still in the Fourth Republic. So the Fourth Republic was initiated through the 1999 Constitution, and for its first election, the Independent National Electoral Commission recognized three political parties, which are the People's Democratic Party, the All People's Party, and of course the Action for Democracy, AID. And so following a Supreme Court judgment on the case of Balarabe Musa versus INEC, conditions for registration of political parties were liberalized because there were lots of protestations as to why INEC was not registering political parties in Nigeria. So for that reason, when the matter got to court, the court ruled that political party registration ought to be liberalized to allow room for, multi-party democracy, in the sense that people should be able to have a choice as to who governs them. So subsequently, the Nigerian political space was widened and witnessed unprecedented opening in terms of the emergence of several other political parties. As at April 2011, it was noted that there were about 63 political parties that were registered. Prominent among the new parties are parties like, which later came to be Action Congress of Nigeria, the Congress for Political Change, CPC, the People's Progressive Alliance. There are so many of them, actually. I'm just citing this as examples. Now, in addition, many small parties took advantage of the liberalization of political space to register political parties that have proven to be, unviable, but meant to be vehicles through which INEC's funding support to political parties could actually be cornered. Just to mention that, yes, once upon a time, INEC once funded political parties in Nigeria, but it was only for that year because sustaining your existence as a political party is based on certain criteria established by INEC. And if you don't meet those criteria, you stand the risk of being deregistered as a political party. So in order to promote credible elections, with the existence of strong political parties, Section 78(6) of the 23rd Electoral Act provided INEC with the power to deregister any political party that failed to win any executive or legislative seats in the elections. And at the time, it was only 10 parties that won seats in the 2011 elections. So by 18th of August of 2011, INEC deregistered several political parties that did not contest for any elective position. So, and again, like I said, the liberalization of the political space at the time led to the emergence of so many political parties. And it was thought that a lot of the political parties were largely referred to as briefcase, political parties because they barely exist in the briefcase of certain politicians. There were no national offices or state offices, as the case may be, and were used as vehicles to access the funding that was available to political parties at the time. INEC also announced its intention to deregister more political parties as soon as the numerous court cases by some political parties were determined, because there were lots of litigations against INEC. And then at the end of 2012, an additional 31 political parties were deregistered, leaving only 27 registered political parties. Now, what we have done is basically to look at the evolution of political parties in Nigeria. Now, it's important to now focus on political parties and looking at it from the political landscape of Nigeria. Within our political landscape as a country, there are very many players, call them stakeholders. We have politicians, we have political parties, political movements, we have electoral systems, the umpire, anti-corruption crusaders, electorates, judiciary, of course, the arms of government, and then the traditional institution, pressure groups, civil society organizations and situation rooms, as well as, of course, those we call technoticians. So all of these exist for purpose of deepening political culture, and they form the very structure via which governance is served in Nigeria. So with what we've known about political parties, clearly we can comfortably now define political party as an organized group of people with at least roughly similar political aims and opinions that seek to influence public policy by getting their candidate or its candidate elected into public office. Of course, this is the basis for why political parties exist. They are the vehicles. And because the 1979 Constitution abolished the place of independent candidates, we only have political parties as vehicles that can sponsor an individual into office. So parties are basically deeply and durably entrenched within our political systems. And these parties are entrenched for reasons of sustaining the well-functioning of our democracy, linking governmental institutions to the elements of civil society in a free and fair society. And of course, political parties are necessary for the functioning of any modern democratic political system globally. So they are very important. Now, there are different types of political parties. We have single party systems, example in China. We have two-party systems, e.g. in the United States, where you have the Democrats and the Republicans. And then, of course, we have multi-party systems in countries like Germany, Nigeria, etc. Of course, there are other countries that have multi-party systems. So it's important to also note that underlying every political party is the issue of ideological positioning. And when you talk about ideological positioning, it's what underpins the very existence of the political parties that we have. So we have ideologies like liberalism, conservatism, socialism, and of course, nationalism. And these ideologies shape policies and, of course, political platforms. So parties that are considered to the left, just like you can see on the political spectrum that we have here, we have the far left parties are considered very radical parties. And then you have the liberal parties, which are to the left of center. And then, of course, in the center, you have those we call the moderates. The moderates are neither here nor there. They are just in between. Then we have what we call the Conservative Party, which are, of course, to the right of center. And then, of course, the extreme rights are the reactionary ideological parties. So this political spectrum clearly shapes how political party ideologies are classified either to the left or, to the right. Now, what do political parties basically do? We've said earlier, the political parties are the vehicles via which political party canvass for votes and, of course, acquire political power. So they solicit and articulate public policy priorities, which, of course, are encapsulated in what you call the party manifesto. And then they socialize and educate voters and citizens in functioning of the political and electoral systems and the generation of general political values. Now, this again is questionable. Questionable in the sense that we actually expect that political parties will perform the role of, voter education. But as many of us can see, hardly do political parties do this. A lot of the political parties after elections just go back to the doldrums, and then you never hear of them until when elections are approaching, and then you begin to hear about them. And that's the reason why the Electoral College of Nigeria exists, to fill that gap by providing political literacy and education to timid Nigerian populace to understand the basis of, political parties, elections, governance, and citizenship. Because part of our duties and rights as citizens is the right to vote and also be voted for. And this is the reason why the Electoral College is expounding knowledge in this direction. What do political parties do? They provide a balance of opposing demands and converting them into general policies. And this is very true because when opposition express opinion on the way the country is governed, on certain policies and so on, it provides an opportunity for the political parties to then look at some of those opinions, syndicate and synthesize them, and convert them into policy directions for the government. But this would happen in settings where political parties are really supreme, because in Nigeria, the way the political parties are structured do not really wield such influence over public policy officials. So you have situations where, for instance, the president is seen as the leader of the political party. So that sort of, takes away some level of authority and autonomy that the political party were supposed to wield over those they have sponsored into office, because the party sponsored the people. But what we have is, the reverse, where you have individuals who basically fund or sponsor the political parties. So when you have such situations, you can imagine that such parties will not have the level of influence they are supposed to have over those they have sponsored into office. And then political parties also serve as channel for public opinion from citizens to government. So you hear citizens express opinion about how they are being governed and all of that. And again, it's the role of political parties to channel those public opinion to government. And then political parties, of course, recruit and train candidates for public office. Clearly, you will agree with me that a lot of those who emerge eventually as public office holders are people who do not have any training in governance. So clearly, political parties do not actually train those who hold public offices. They do not provide that level of training formally to them to prepare them for public service. And that's a major challenge. And again, like I said, this is the reason the Electoral College Nigeria was, set up to actually bridge this gap. And kudos to the visionary and the executive director of the Electoral College for providing this platform for all of us to actually be educated and gain political literacy in Nigeria. We look forward to a time where other African countries will also be subscribing to the Electoral College to be part of this amazing program that we're having today. So for every political party, there are what I consider operational imperatives. And to perform the above mentioned task, to perform all these functions of political parties and citizens need some rights and obligations guaranteed or ruled by the Constitution or law. And these include the freedom of, organization, freedom to stand for elections, freedom of speech and assembly, provision of a fair and peaceful competition among political parties, mechanism to ensure, of course, plurality, inclusion in the electoral process and contacts with the electoral bodies, a level playing field, media access, and fair reporting guaranteed by the media outfits. And then, of course, transparent and accountable political finance. So these are very important imperatives for political parties to be able to perform their function, because if people do not exercise their freedom of speech, freedom of participation in an organization of their choice, freedom to stand for elections, and so on and so forth, and all of what has been listed here, it will be difficult for political parties to be able to perform the functions that we talked about. So political parties are very essential to our democracy. And like we said, political parties compete for elections and offer citizens a choice in governance. And this happens through the different political parties. So if you are not comfortable with the choice of a candidate that had been given the flag of a political party, you have the choice to look out for another candidate of your choice in another political party. Now, in opposition, political parties can hold government to account. And of course, we've not really had that viable opposition in Nigeria as it should be, especially in recent times. But one of the things we hope that will happen as a result of knowledge and political literacy is that we'll be able to begin to hold the government in power to account, because governance follows immediately after elections. After elections are conducted and won. And so it's very important to really focus on governance. And the only way to keep the government of the day is to provide a very virile and strong opposition to the government. So opposition party is not a bad thing. Being in the opposition is not a bad thing. It provides an opportunity for learning. It provides an opportunity to also contribute to the governance of the country. So when citizens join political parties, volunteer their time, donate money, and vote for their leaders, they're exercising their basic democratic rights, of course. And participation of citizens in political parties offers very unique benefits. For instance, influence policy choices, choose and engage political leaders, and of course, run for office. So I actually would love to underline these points here, especially as it has to do with citizens' participation in political parties. One is to influence policy choices, because when you belong to a political party, you have an opportunity to then influence policy choices within that political party. Secondly, you have an opportunity to choose and engage political leaders, because when you vote in your political party, if there are, internal democracies, what you are doing is basically contributing to the election of people you are going to put forward to govern you. And this is very important. And then, of course, you can't run for office if you do not belong to a political party. So you must belong to a political party. You must contribute to that political party. We said earlier here that when citizens join political party, they volunteer their time, they donate their money, and of course, they vote for their leaders of their choice. However, in some countries, political parties do not respect the right of citizens to participate and are not accountable to, voters. And not just in other countries. In Nigeria, as it were, we also have this situation where political parties, sometimes do not respect the rights of the citizens who are members of their parties. And that's why you have a lot of grievances within the political parties. So people seem to be shortchanged at one point or the other. And this, of course, usually result in deep resentment within the party. Of course, to many of us who are watchers of the political activities that have taken place in the past couple of weeks, you will agree with me that the direct primaries that were conducted ushered in a lot of, resentment within the political parties, because some persons who lost out sought to actually effect a change in the outcome of that process, and many of us, of course, saw how that direct primaries went, especially with the manner of counting. That was, clear case of changing some candidates who do, or aspirants who do not have the wherewithal to, get the process to their favor. So this usually results in a lot of very deep resentment within the party. Now, every political party has a party management system, and political parties, of course, are guided in its structure and function by one, the party constitution and manifesto. Like I said earlier, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria guarantee the establishment of a multi-party democracy, especially when you look at Section 221 and Section 222 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. And then you have the party constitution, we have the code of conduct. And speaking about party constitution, that is clearly circumscribed in Section 223 of the 1999 Constitution. So every party must have a constitution and, of course, manifesto. And then you have code of conduct for party members. Now, parties are also managed by conventions, and by conventions we mean perhaps previous agreements, resolutions, regulations of the party that may have been created at some point or the other to allow for the easy management of the party, and then the party standing rules, and of course, extant guidelines that may be existing either from international bodies like International Republican Institute and so on and so forth. All of these guidelines serve as instruments that guide the management of political parties. And of course, other guidelines also include INEC guidelines for political party management. So all of these are instruments by which political parties are properly managed. And then we have customs like culture, procedures, practices, e.g., consensus, etc. If you go to there are cultural parameters that define how political parties will be managed. For instance, of course, you know that if you travel up to the far north, you will agree that there are certain things that are very fundamental cultures in the north. And if you do not understand those cultural dynamics, you will not be able to get your party down to the grassroots. So you must, first of all, look at what are those, cultural dynamics in play in the north. You go to the east and the south, you also find certain, cultural dynamics you have to take into consideration. And of course, the west and so on and so forth. So all of these form customs. And then there are judicial pronouncements that have become instruments by which political parties are governed. So if there are political rulings, of course, those becomes automatically instruments for management of political parties. And then we have the electoral laws, and of course, the constitution of the country, which is the ground norm, very important. Now, we can't talk about political party without talking about party financing. And it's important to note that in a study done by Babayo et al. In 2018, political party financing and corruption in Nigeria for the Fourth Republic. It's a document that you can actually access for those who are political science students. You can access that to look at, how political parties financing actually result. But according to Babayo et al., these are, how political parties are funded or financed in Nigeria. A significant, portion of the financing for political parties, which is 36%, comes from personal and private, contribution. So individual and private contribution make up 36%. And 20%, which is the next, is from godfathers. So a lot of, Nigeria, of course, Nigerian political system is replete with godfathers. So, and a lot of these godfathers have very significant war chest to finance elections in Nigeria. So they contribute about 20%. This is a study that was done. And then 17% party financing comes from sale of forms. So for you to join a political party, of course, you have to register. So you obtain the form, and then you pay for the form. It's a small amount of money, but if you look at the size of the political party and vis-a-vis the amount that is paid, that gives you an idea of how much the party can generate from sale of forms. Sorry. So, and then we have yeah, I've talked about selling of forms, and then we have 7% that comes from grants from parties. So yeah, and then we have donations, which makes up, donations actually make up 17%. Sale of forms makes up 7%, and grants, of course, makes up 7%. And then we have loot from public treasury, which makes 13%. And of course, it may sound very funny that 13% from loot from public treasury. You'll be asking, some people might be asking, how does that happen? I think it's very simple to know that in Nigeria today, the basis for appointment is potential for political patronage. So before you can be given a political position, it's the government of the day wants to know that, the person is loyal and will contribute to financing the party, especially during elections. So a lot of those who who are appointed, I'm not saying everybody, but this is from a study that was done, indicate that a lot of those who are appointed solely for the purpose of political patronage, so that because the position is that the wheels of the political party can only be oiled by the resources that come from those who have been appointed. And this is the reason why you have a lot of sleaze, and people dipping hands in the, public coffers to, either embezzle money, corner resources, and for these people. So basically, that's how a lot of political parties are funded. And let me also note that a lot of the major contracts that are awarded, right? A lot of the major contracts that are awarded specifically for purpose of funding elections. So please, let's not forget that. And you can keep you can take that to the bank, because that's generally what happens. So when you find those big contracts, they are warehouses for money, for the resources to prosecute elections. Now, to conclude, we will look very quickly at structures. So oftentimes we talk about structures of a political party. Yeah, people, do you have a structure? So the structures of a political party are not any big deal, as the case may be. I want us to know that the structures of a political party are things that we already know. You, first of all, as an individual, you're an asset, and you constitute a structure of the party as well. So as an individual, you are a structure. If you belong to a political party, you are a structure of that political party. But let's look at the former structures of a political party that we have. Now, you can look at all of these lists here, from ward executive to ward congresses, local government, executive, local government, congress, senatorial, all down to the national convention of the party. All these are structures of the party. So when you talk about structures of the party, we are basically referring to all of these structures that we have here. So I'm sure by now it's no longer anything surprising what constitutes structure of a political party. Now, we'll just X-ray because it's, I think we are 9 minutes past our time, even though we didn't start early. So we'll look at some of the structures and their functions. If you take, for instance, the Ward Executive Committee, what does the Ward Executive Committee do? One, they administer the party at the ward level. They raise funds for the party at the ward level. They do membership drive. They draw up strategies for political campaigns, mobilize voters for the party, implement the decision of the ward congresses and other organs of the party. They receive ward auditors' reports, and they perform such other function as may be in the interest of the party, and as may from time to time, of course, be assigned to it by higher organs of the party. Now, these are the functions of the Ward Executive Committee. Now, we also have the Ward Congress. The Ward Congress, I often say, is like the legislative arm of the party. So when you hear Congress, the Congresses are like the legislative arm of the party, and you'll see why I said so. So the Ward Congress is largely composed of all elected and political office holders and registered members of the party, and they meet once a year. They could meet more than that, depending on the political party. And what are their functions? These include receive report of officers of the ward, that is the executive, receive auditors' report, approve the budget of the ward. So you can see this is a legislative function. However, it's important to note that the Ward Congress is presided over by the ward chairman. Now, elects ward delegates to the party congress, that is the state party congress. Then conduct primaries for ward elections, those who will stand elections as councillors. It is the ward congresses that conduct the primaries for them. And then the Congress also carry out other functions as may be in the interest of the party. So these are two very important structures of the party. And then you come to the local government, you also have the local government executive. The functions also include, just as we have for the ward, raising fund, membership drive, drawing up strategies for political campaign, mobilizing voters, implementing decisions of the local government congress, identify and resolve political, social, and economic issues of concern to the local government area, and provide strategies for effective communication between the ward and the local government, implement decision of the local government congresses, and so on and so forth. So those are functions of the local government executive committee. Now, we also have the local government area congress. And this congress here, the local government party chairman and other members of the local government area executive committee make up are part of the local government congress. Like I said earlier, the chairman of the local government, chairman of the party at the local government is the chairman of the local government congress. And so all those, all the national, zonal, and state executive committee members of the party from that local government are members of the local government congress. So you see, the congresses are bigger than the executive. And that's why I said the decisions of the congress overrides the decision of the executive at that level of the party. Now, all chairmen and secretaries of the ward executive committee from the local government area are also members of that particular structure. All members of the National and State House of Assembly from that local government are also members of that Congress. And then the Congress also elects 3 delegates from each ward of the local government area, elected at the ward Congress, at least one of whom shall be a woman, and all of whom shall cease to function as at the conclusion of the Congress for which they were, elected. So it's a very important function that these different structures perform at their different levels. So the local government Congress elects members of the local government executive committee of the party. They elect the local government council chairmanship candidate. The chairmanship candidate of the party is elected at the local government Congress. Then they also elect the local government party delegates to the national convention. Now, the new electoral law provides for direct primaries. So the issue of party delegates to national convention has been abolished based on the new electoral law. So everybody, as much as you are a member of the party, can participate in the primaries, which is the reason why we saw all of those things that happened during the primaries. And then the local government Congress also approved the budget of the party, and they received report of the local government auditors report. So those are the functions of that particular structure. And then at the state level, we have the state caucus, and this, of course, is based on the political party. Some have state caucuses, state elders committee, state executive committee of the party, state party congress, state House of Assembly Congress, House of Representative Congress, senatorial district. So it depends on the party. This may not be the case for all of the parties. Just to highlight that at the state level, we have the State Working Committee, which is the executive, the structure that runs the day-to-day affairs of the party. Now, we have the functions of that of the State Party Congress. The State Party Congress approved the budget of the state branch of the party. It elects officers of the State Executive Committee or the State Working committee. It elects the governorship candidate of the party. So the governorship or gubernatorial candidate of the party is elected at the state party congress. It receives report from the officers of the party, and then it receives also the party auditor's report. So those are the functions of the state party congress. Very important functions. Very important functions. And now finally, we have the National Working Committee. So at the national level, we have the National Working Committee, and which is made up of all these elected officials that we have here, from the national chairman down to the national youth leader of the party. So the functions of the NWC is the day-to-day administration of the party. They also act on behalf of the National Executive Committee. Now, let me distinguish this. The National Working Committee of the party is made up of these elected officials, as we have here. But the National Executive Committee is bigger than the State National Working Committee. The National Working Committee is made up of the elected officials plus the state chairman of all the party in the different states. And it also includes the governors who are elected on that platform. And of course, the president, who is also elected from that party platform, all of whom make up the executive committee of the party. So there is a quorum, and of course, there is also the frequency of meetings for the National Working Committee. In some political parties, you have another structure called the National Caucus, and whose chairman is the chairman of the Board of Trustees. And the National Caucus, of course, for some political parties, others may not have, some have. And you have who can be members of that National Caucus. And the caucus also have its function circumscribed within the constitution of the party. And usually, it's basically to harmonize the relationship between the executive and the legislature, or the legislative arm of government, coordinate the activities and those of the party as well. And so they serve as an additional, support to the National Working Committee. They also review and advise on policy matters and programs of government as well. Now, I choose to talk about this, the National Legislative Caucus, so that we understand one of the very important roles that the legislative caucuses perform. So every political party has what you call every political party that exists in the National Assembly have a National Legislative Caucus. The major function is, one, to choose floor leaders and presiding officers. So when you see all those positions like majority leader, deputy majority leader, chief whip, deputy chief whip, minority chief whip, deputy minority chief whip, all of those positions you are seeing, including chairman and vice chairman of committees. It is the legislative caucuses that constitutes those positions. And I'll tell you why. So for instance, the legislative caucus of APC, which is the ruling party, determines who becomes the majority leader, the deputy majority leader, and all of that. Those decisions are made at that legislative caucus. The minority parties like PDP, Labour Party, if it still exists, and others, their legislative caucuses are the ones that determine who represent them in the leadership of the committee. So the legislative caucuses determine who is selected and forwarded to the leadership of the National Assembly, either in the Senate or House of Rep, to be included as chairman of committees or as minority leaders of the party. So that's why these committees are very important. The legislative caucus is very important. Secondly, the legislative caucus also deliberate and take a position on behalf of the party in the National Assembly, whether in the Senate or in the House of Rep. So if you bring an important legislative bill like tax bill, for instance, the legislative caucuses of the different parties will come together, deliberate on the elements of that particular bill, and decide whether to support it or not to support it. That's part of the functions that the legislative caucuses perform. Then, of course, we have the NEC, the National Executive Committee, which I said earlier is bigger than the National Working Committee. So you can see all of those who make up the members of the National Executive Committee. It's so big. You have the chairman, who shall be the chairman of that's the chairman of the party, who shall be the chairman of the NEC. You have the chairman and secretary, chairman and secretary of the Board of Trustees. We have all of these leaders that we have here, all the state chairmen, they are members of the National Executive Committee. We have 6 ex-official members elected based on the 6 geopolitical zones. The president of the country, if he's a member of that party, the vice president, senate president, all of these leaders make up the members of the National Executive Committee of the party. So it's a much bigger structure than the National Working Committee. And they have all of these functions circumscribed for the NEC in the constitution of the party. Okay, so they convene the National Convention and appoint the Convention Organizing Committee. So every National Convention you are seeing is convened by the NEC. It's the NEC that has the power to convene the National Convention, set up the committee and all of that. So it initiates policies. Where necessary, it dissolves a state executive committee and appoint a caretaker. It is within its powers to do that. And those powers are, established in the constitution of the party. So there are quite a lot of the functions of NEC. I'm sure the Electoral College will share these materials with you. For purpose of time, I'm just going to try and round up. And then we have the Board of Trustees of the party, which is, of course, regarded as the conscience of the party. We have the functions of the Board of Trustees of the party, which is to mediate in disputes, coordinate the sourcing of party funding, vested with the assets. The assets of the party are vested in the Board of Trustees. So they keep the assets of the party. Documents relating to the Secretariat of the party, office of the party is vested in the Board of Trustees. And of course, the Common Seal. Now, the highest structure of every political party is what you call the National Convention. And the composition of the National Convention is made up of the national chairman of the party, who shall be the chairman of the convention, other members of the National Executive Committee, as already mentioned earlier. Initially, we used to have the national delegate from each of the local governments, party chairman, party chairman of the local government areas, also part of the National Convention. So it's a very large structure, which is the reason why we used to have what we call we have the National Convention done in open fields like the Eagle Square and the maybe National Stadium and so on and so forth. But all of these were when we used to have the indirect system of, primaries. However, for the purpose of election of party officials, you will have a national convention with all of this representation so that you can elect the party members. And there are functions of the National Convention as contained in the constitution of the party. I won't read everything, but I'll just pick on very important functions of the National Convention. One of them is to note that the National Convention is the supreme and controlling authority of, the party. It is the supreme and controlling authority of the party within the limits prescribed in the Constitution of the party. And it shall be the principal representative in terms of policy making, administering the party. So the National Convention is powerful. It shall have supremacy in all matters pertaining to the party and all officers and organs of the party. So it's a very important structure. Then the election of the presidential candidate, which used to be at the National Convention, that has been devolved, now is through direct primaries. So it's no longer going to be here. This will be reviewed, or perhaps just add that, direct primaries are conducted for purpose of electing the presidential flag bearer. So it elects or removes the national officers of the party. That's another important function of the National Convention. And then the other very, very, very important function of the National Convention is the revision or amendment to the constitution of the party. It can only be done at the National Convention. The National Executive Committee may propose those amendments, but they have to go to the National Convention to ratify those proposals and adopt them as sections of the constitution of the party. So those are basically the functions of, and then the National Convention also appoints external auditors to audit the party accounts and provide reports to the party. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've looked at political parties today, and of course, the structures of the political parties. It's also important to know that partnerships, mergers, coalitions are all structures of a political party. So a party can decide to go into a coalition. Earlier, the ED talked about COP. So for those who may be wondering what COP means, is Coalition of United Political Parties, which of course was established at the time. It was actually an innovation by the People's Democratic Party to get parties together to support its cause. So some parties went in knowingly while others don't. And of course, there were certain lages that, came with belonging to the CUPP. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for us today. And these are some of the references that, had been referenced for purpose of this particular presentation. So thank you. I hand over to Adeola for any comments or questions.
Okay, wow. Thank you very much, Dr. Ibiang. This has been fascinating, it has been illuminating. Thank you very, very much. So fast, I presume with Dr. Ibiang, a big round of applause. Let's appreciate and applaud for taking us on this wonderful political journey. I know before you can learn some of these things, you must have lost, some people must have contested and lost elections and not a lot of things, and he has taught us some of these fascinating things for free. So, Doctor, we thank you very, very much for this educational expose. I know we have some questions, so while we give the doctor a few minutes maybe to sip some water or something, if any of us have a question, just signify, maybe so that I can unmute you, or you can put it in the chat box. But meanwhile, let's give our resource person just a few minutes to catch his breath before we go on. I can see Olatunji and Akin Folaji, you're raising your hand. So Olatunji, let me unmute. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah. Good day, everyone. We appreciate our facilitator for that wonderful presentation. My question, the one I want to quickly ask, may be somewhat funny. My first question is, can political party or politician be taken to court over the failure to deliver on their campaign promises or manifesto? That is my first question. And the second question is around the party financing. That does the electoral body has power over the cost of the form? You know, we see that many of these political parties, especially the major ones, the cost of the forms, the nomination form, and what have you, are somewhat outrageous. Does INEC have power over this? And finally, does it make sense that the electoral body give grants to political parties? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Olutunji. Dr. Sir, do you want to respond to him, or we take two or three together, sir? Hello, Dr. Ibian. Doctor, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Let's take another.
Yeah.
I've noted these
All right.
questions.
Okay. So let's do a gender balance, and let's take Victoria Oyenekon. You can unmute yourself and ask your question. Victoria. Victoria Oyenekon, I can see your hand. Unmute and ask your question. Can you hear me, Victoria?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, sir. What I wanted to ask that during the introduction, the background to this presentation, he mentioned the word Hausa Fulani. I have been having an issue hearing this word. When I was in secondary school, they taught us about the three ethnic group. Later on, they changed textbook. They added Kanuri. Later on, they removed it. This recently, I started hearing Hausa Fulani. I don't know when the merge started. Is it from like the history of what he gave us? I can see that even before our independence, it was when he mentioned that. But later on, it wasn't involved in our textbook. With this incident coming up, we started hearing Hausa Fulani. So I want to know the origin of that word, or was it like that from the beginning, or there's something that was missing in our education? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. I can see Jamil Usman. You've raised up the hand. Let's just quickly add your question so that doctor can answer three of you together. Jamil Usman, and maybe you can answer Victoria and some of our questions. Can you go ahead? You can go ahead. Jamil Usman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. Please, are you with me?
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. Can you even first help us answer Victoria? We'll wait for the doctor to do that.
Oh, okay, sir. Good evening. Thank you so much for the doctor, our guest. We really appreciate his presentation, and it's quite understanding.
All right.
My question is about this direct primaries that is amended in the Electoral Act. We've seen it's disgusting what we've seen in the past primary election, and how can we, as the citizens of Nigeria, go away with this, because I think it will be better if the delegate election continues than this kind of direct primaries. This is my question to Doctor. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Jamil. Doctor, can you do justice to the three of them first before we pick other people?
Sure. Okay, so
all right, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so let me begin with the last person.
That's Jamil Husman.
Very good
yes.
point. A very good concern. Someone said to me that I think a legal expert once said that the tastes of every new law is in its application. So you cannot be able to inform the review of a particular law without testing it. So you have to test it. Now, this was our first test of the direct primaries. We have all seen how it went. So the question now is whether we should sustain that provision or we should revert back. So I'm sure after the elections, there will be. So for now, a lot of persons are holding back on, like I said earlier, there are resentments arising from the process. No one seemed to be talking yet because of fear of being sanctioned. But after the elections, you definitely find a lot of realignments will begin. There will be a lot of opinion as to whether we can actually sustain that process or not. It happened in the First Republic. A lot of the things happening now are not really new to our political systems. There are things that have happened in the past, and so which of course led to some of the failures in the alliances that happened at the time. So we are seeing some of these things resurfacing again. So like I said earlier, it's only in testing the laws that we have passed today that we can actually know whether we will have a working system or not. So those conversations will definitely happen. And I'm happy that you are also already thinking along that line. I don't have any specific answer to that question, but just to say that it is something that is just developing, it's just evolving. And so we'll see how that evolves over time. Now, the issue of Hausa Fulani dates back to history, and it's basically a recognition of the fact that up north we do not have just one single tribe. We have the Fulanis, we have the Hausas, and in order to it's a question of identity. Okay, it's a question of identity, and it's very important. And the reason is to ensure that these two nationalities are actually present in the north dominantly. And so what you call Hausa Fulani is a merged social, cultural or socio-political identity that comes from years of living together, whether as a result of migrations and so on and so forth. So that's why you have that um, how do I put it now? That nomenclature, Hausa Fulani. So it's not something new. It has always been there. It has always been there. And like I said, it's a question of identity, recognizing that there are two dominant groups in the north. Now, the first person talked about whether you can take a party to court over failure to deliver. Of course, everyone is free to, you are free to initiate a litigation. Of course, if a government did not serve you after making a commitment that it will serve you, you are free to take that government to court. Let's test it and see where that leads. Above that is also that you can also critique that government. The issue of forms for expression of interest and for contestations in elections, whether INEC have power to regulate, is actually the business of political parties. So it is the political parties that have the powers to set the cost. So it is for the members to come together and say, no, look, we cannot sustain this. We will be disenfranchising people, credible persons from, contesting elections. Because I can assure you that you have a lot of credible persons in a political party who may not have the resources to buy those forms. And as a result, you have systematically disenfranchised them. For instance, when you set such amount of money, young people in the party may not be able to afford it. Women may not be able to afford this, because when you look at the dimensions of, financial power, it varies according to different groups. So setting the amount for forms is solely the business of the party leadership. Grants to political party, that happened just once at the time. And after then, the government stopped that because it was something that was subject to abuse. Like I said, there was proliferation of political parties, specifically because they felt that, they could access those grants. And these political parties that even assessed those funds at the time did not really apply the funds to the purpose for which they were issued to them. So as a result, government discontinued that process. So as we speak, that has been long discontinued. It doesn't happen anymore. So I think those are the questions I have at this time.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. So looking at the chat box, Ambassador John Samuel Babangida posted a question there, and also Isaac Promise Ilya. But I believe the question from Ambassador John Samuel Babangida is just something you've referred to. He's asking how, when political parties use money to block those with capacity, which you have answered now. So we're just acknowledging this question.
Okay.
And the other one is from Isaac Promise Ilya, which he talked about how effective the direct primaries can be than the national convention primaries, which you have also touched a little bit, except you want to expatiate. But I'm just acknowledging the two of them in our chat box. So let me go back to those raising their hands again. I have Bar Elvis. You've been raising your hand for some time. Let me unmute you. Bar Elvis Diombi. I hope I got that right. So you can go ahead, Bar. Are you with us? Bar Elvis Diombi.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to ask that since the political party in Nigeria all have the functionaries, those bodies are created. Then today, the ruling party in Nigeria, APC, is having challenges. I can basically say that because I'm coming from Taraba State, where our senatorial districts, there are two senatorial districts having crisis of having more than one candidate that celebrate every day of their victories from the primaries since when they concluded the Congress. Member House of Representatives also complaining, celebrating more than one candidate from the same political party. So if the party is having a body that governs every other thing, who are those responsible to stop this nuisance in the communities so that people will regulate campaigns and channel their energy to one direction, since most of us are not going after political party, but we are going after candidacy? Thank you, sir. That's my question.
All right, thank you very much, Bar. Doctor, let me add one more person, then you can take two of them together. Let's do the balancing. We have Adeoti Ruth. Oluwa Adeoti Ruth. You can go ahead. Can you hear me? Adeoti Ruth.
Yes, I hear you, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. So go ahead with your question for the doctor.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, doctor, for disturbing. My question is, if your vision and your aim is, yeah, like as you're in the political party, and your vision is not aligning with the political party you are, what can the person do? Or how can the person make eviction on public in the political party he or she is involved in? And the second question is, if you are in a political party system and let's say those know that those above you, you're just a normal member trying to build up your political party in that group, and they're not giving you this chance or the privilege to grow, what can you do? That's my question, sir. Hello, sir.
Okay, yeah, I got your question. We're just trying to
Okay.
note that down. Yeah. Okay, so the question as to how effective can direct primaries be? Let me say this. You see, to every general policy, there are advantages and disadvantages. So, and I won't want to use the word disadvantages. There are shortcomings to every policy. So when you have a law that provides for direct primaries, it is for the purpose of inclusion. But let's not forget that. Direct primaries is for the purpose of inclusion. For instance, when we used to have indirect primaries, what happens is that delegates are selected. And you know that the process of selection of delegates is an intricate one, and it's usually a big business. And I'll give you an example. In the build-up to the 2019 and subsequently 2022 primaries, in fact, someone made a joke that he's going to publish a book on how to become a delegate. So the question was how people can become delegate, because becoming a delegate was something very lucrative, because these delegates were well resourced, and you understand what I mean. You have delegates who were, according to what we gathered from the field, getting as much as $10,000 or $20,000 just for being a delegate to come and vote for a particular candidate. So you see, the vast majority of party members are usually excluded in the choice of who becomes the candidate of the party, either as presidential flag bearer or gubernatorial flag bearer. Now, these are some of the drawbacks with indirect primaries. But with direct primaries, there is what you call inclusivity. There is inclusion. Every member of the party participates, unless you are unable to come out that day, either as a result of ill health or maybe because you traveled out of the state or you were not available. Other than that, there is inclusion. Everybody participates in that process. But of course, like I said, to every good policy, there are also shortcomings. So how effective can direct primaries be? I can tell you that can come from testing that particular law. And we only have just started, okay? We only have just started. Maybe subsequently, we will begin to perfect that process. But after this election cycle, we are going to witness a situation where there will be lots of conversations. For instance, you remember the law that limits people from moving from one party to the other when you lose an election. Now, when the National Assembly was passing that law, little did they know that that was actually going to affect them. And it affected a lot of them. So they are stuck within the party. They can't move out, because they made the law themselves. So they have to, stay within the party. Even though a lot of them became disgruntled because they didn't expect that they were going to lose. And of course, some of them were members of the National Assembly, you see. So a lot of them were affected. So now that they made the law, they have tested it and it affected them, they are going to, enjoy that bitter part of the law. So that's basically how it works. So over time, as we get used to it, it becomes a lot more fluid and more effective. Now, my sister there talked about okay, so the person from Taraba talked about multiple candidacy from the primaries. Again, yeah, I think I listened to the National Public Secretary of the APC. What's that his name again? When he talked about, challenges they have in some of the states. That the primaries at the time had been largely successful in some of the states, but just few of them had, skirmishes here and there. So I think those are part of the things that the party leadership will be addressing within its system if it has not been done. So those are things that will be handled by the party, because on the ballot, what you have is the party. So the party necessarily will resolve the issue of who emerges as the candidate, because those are prerogatives of the party, not INEC. It's only the party that can do that. Now, my sister talked about vision misalignment. What happens if you are in a party, which vision doesn't align with yours? You move out. The whole idea, don't forget, a party is a group of people with a common ideology. So if your ideology doesn't align with that of the party, you move out. There are many, that's the whole idea of multi-party democracy. You move to another party, you think that the ideology, aligns with yours, or yours aligns with that of the party. You mustn't be in a party because the party is, popular, like the major political parties. No, that shouldn't be the basis. The basis should be that there is an alignment of your um, your ideology. So what's your ideology about political party participation? That's what should define basis for which party you select. So that's why we are teaching this, so that you go back and reflect on this and think about what should guide your party selection. You recall when we talk about the ideological spectrum of, political party, and I did mention that it's important for, we talked about this. Parties are considered to the left and to the right, where to the right, you're looking at issues around social justice. When you talk about the leftist parties, you're basically looking at social justice, egalitarianism, economic equality, all of those things. Those are things that define the political ideological spectrum. And of course, the far right talks about very reactionary. So again, you must look at all of this. What are the things that drive you as a person? Do you want social justice? Do you want egalitarianism? Do you want economic equality, where the dimensions of power are on a scale that is balanced, a balanced scale? So you don't have gender dimensions that shows disparity in terms of economic power. So men have more resources than women, like that. So those are leftist ideology. So if that is what you're looking out for, there are political parties that represent that. An example is Labour Party. So again, you can sit down and look at all the political parties, put them on the table, look at their manifesto. Those are things you need to do before you jump into the political party. So if there is a misalignment of ideology, move out. The other point you made as to limitation in growth within the political party, where you are stalemated because you are not being allowed, you are being oppressed within the party. Look, I did mention again earlier that there are what we call operational imperatives for every political party. The operational imperatives are safeguards that must necessarily exist within a political party for people to be able to help the political party to perform its function. One of them is the freedom to stand for election, freedom of speech and assembly. That is freedom of speech, referring to the freedom to contribute to a conversation within the political party. So if you are being can we mute that thing so that, yeah. So if you are being oppressed in a party and not allowed to contribute, there are party mechanisms, internal conflict resolution mechanisms within the party. You can explore that. And where that is not working, again, those are the reasons why you should jet out. The reason is simply because, you see, once you join a political party, you look out for these operational imperatives. Are they enshrined within the constitution of the party? One. Two, what internal conflict resolution mechanisms exist within that party? Three, how fair is the leadership in terms of engaging with its members, periodically? So these are things that you need to look out for. When it doesn't exist, you can make proposals for these things to actually become operationalized. When that doesn't fly, you should begin to ask yourself, do I really belong here? There are many other political parties. Let me look at the one that aligns with my ideology, and that provides an enabling environment for growth and, prospect of opportunities that may exist. So I think those are the questions I have. I hope.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor. It's been fascinating having you with us. But unfortunately, we have to bring the class to a close. So let me just hand over to the DED, Ms. Lisa, to conclude this very class. DED, ma, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you so much, Dr. Yang. It's been such an informative and insightful time with you. Thank you for always being available and being a firm supporter of the college. Really
Thank you.
appreciate you. I'll just allow the students to unmute you and tell their thanks before we continue.
Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate it. You really give me what I wanted to my question. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
sir.
very
We're
much for the
grateful.
insightful class.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you for your time.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Party and be an active member.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the college, again, we say a very big thank you to you. For the students, there are no announcements at the moment, but remember that when you log into Zoom, please always put your registration number alongside your name, not in the chat as your name. Just rename your name to your name as you want it to appear on your certificate and your registration number, so that in case we have people with two similar names, we can differentiate with your registration number. So it's very important for you to always include your registration number alongside your name. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Your assignments should come tomorrow, so put an eye out for that. Have a lovely evening and have a great week ahead. Well done, Adebola. Great job.
Thank you very much. Thank you.